Okay, hey guys. I just wanted to come back with a part 2 of this building your first app following this training series here. Today we're going to do starting another activity. I wanted to cover a few things from the previous video first though. One, I wanted to make one correction. I did say when you deployed your application you would get an icon on your home screen. You will not. You'll get an icon in your all apps, but you would have to bring it to your home screen manually if you so desire. Other than that, though, I never got to actually show you what the app looked like. So we're going to go ahead and deploy our code exactly the way it was previously. And why is it? Oh, okay. I already have an instance of it open. So this is what it looked like previously. I've made no changes here, and we're just going to hit deploy. I am using the same viewer at the moment. I am pretty sure the reason the last application crashed when I tried to run it was because I was having a conflict between that screen recorder and this program here, but I believe I fixed that conflict, so I'm going to hit the play button and we should see it launch right over here. And yep, comes right up. Okay, so we'll see right here that it says we'll see the icon, and the training one is the title of our application. We'll go over how to change that in just a second. And we're also seeing where it says please enter your name, which was the hint we gave it, and our button. Now we'll see the button does a whole lot of nothing. You guys can't really see me. There we go. I'll just press it so you just see the hover effect on the screen here. There's kind of a delay. That's what it looks like when I'm pressing it, but it's doing absolutely nothing. As far as the hint, if I type in something, you'll see the hint immediately goes away. And so that is kind of a benefit there. In terms of that hint could be useful, giving users an idea of what to enter, because otherwise you have to put little headings everywhere, but this way it allows you to build the hint into your text box. Now we did do multiple lines here, so let's do some text. We'll just do cats, and if you remember we set lines equal to 4. We'll look at that in just a second. Cars, cars. Now we set lines equal, I hit cats again, okay. Now if we hit enter one more time, you'll see the first one runs off the screen there. Let's go look at our code and figure out why that's the case, and we'll see that we actually set lines to 4 manually. And so if we were to set lines to 5 or 6 or anything like that, we'd be able to see additional lines, but with 4 it's being cut off. Now the 2 additional settings there were max lines and min lines. You can play with those respectively. If you set a max, it might expand for a while, but then it's never going to cap a certain limit. Those are useful for different things, but just wanted to show you how the interface looked like from the previous video. One other thing I'm going to do here is let's actually change this to 1 and just see what it does if we force it to be 1 line. It looks like it's honoring that 1 line and actually getting rid of the text in our button because it recognizes it doesn't have enough room to make it all fit. So the way we can get around that is by coming back up here and making this vertical. Just playing around with the layout here, just deviating from their standard example. Now a width of 0 DIP is now giving me an error because it should be height. Okay, the width we still want to be wrap content, and the height needs to be 0 DIP because we've changed it to vertical, which means we no longer, when we set weight 1, what's really saying is take up as much vertical space as you need and then leave the rest to button. And that's why we can safely set 0 DIP there, but we're actually going to get rid of the weight. And we're going to set this back to wrap content. Just because in a vertical layout, the weight's not going to be a huge deal like that. Now, it is cutting off our width here because it says wrap content. We technically have no content. All we really have is a hint, which is an interesting side effect. So let's actually just say weight, layout width. We should be able to do if we put 1 here, let's see what that does for us. Okay, it actually doesn't do anything, so let's do Android layout underscore weight. Let's give that a 1. And it's not liking it. Okay. So I've typed something in here incorrectly, so let's try that again. Android weight 1. May have made a typo there or something. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, edit message does not set the required layout width attribute. Oh, I see. Yeah, it needs a layout width, and I'm actually missing one. So we'll just set that to wrap content. Now it's interesting because this layout weight is actually being applied entirely to the height, which is why it's recommending I set it to 0 DIP. But that's not what we want. We actually would like this to go horizontally. So what that really means is we need another linear layout right here. And this is what I was mentioning with the nested layouts, is you can do several horizontal objects, but the objects that are horizontal within this linear layout are also part of a vertical linear layout, and as such will not conflict or anything. They'll just lay out everything within these two braces from side to side, and everything outside these two braces and within this main layout vertically. So we'll get all this stuff horizontally, and then one line down we'll get the button. So because of that, we can now set Android orientation. I just need to use the auto handle, otherwise I will make a typo. Orientation horizontal. See if it likes that. Okay, so now it's saying, again, we can set this to DIP for optimization, but you'll see now it's set width. It's saying we should set width to 0 DIP to be optimized because the width no longer matters, because it will simply take up all of the width available. Okay, so let's come in here. Okay, there's several things wrong. One linear layout actually needs a layout width and a layout height property, so we'll add those. The other thing is actually, I believe we need to do 0 here, not 1. 0 is not working either. Let's set a width and a height to this first and see if that fixes the issue, because that may be part of it. So let's grab these two, and we'll just do wrap content, because we do not want to. On height we'll do wrap content because we only want to take up as much height as it needs, and on width we'll just do match parent because we want it to be the full width of the device. Okay, so now you'll see the text box is taking up the full width, but we're getting a width of 0, so let's go back to width of 1, which is what I had a second ago, and bada boom, perfect. So we're back to what we want, in that we have this text box taking up the full width, and we accomplish that by setting a linear layout of orientation horizontal, so that everything inside of it will span horizontally, and we've added a layout weight of 1 and a width of 0 DIP. DIP is just a unit of measurement that has to do with, again, scaling between different sized devices. We'll get into more of that later. The height, we've just said take up as much height as you need, both on the linear layout and the content itself. And then lines we manually set to 1. Actually, I believe if we get rid of this lines equal to 1, it will simply expand to take up as much space as it needs. So we'll play around without that lines equals 1. The next thing to figure out would be why it's not displaying our button text. So let's come. It should be layout width and layout height. Okay, again, because we have a hint assigned to the button. We don't really want a hint. We really want actual text. Okay, so let's assign text to the button. I'm surprised that didn't do anything. Let's it may be just out of date or something. Is there a way to refresh this? I'm not quite certain. Let's try. Is there a different property we need, like value or something? No, text is the right one, I'm pretty sure. So let's just actually deploy it on our device, and we'll pretty much see if it looks like what we expect. Let's hit deploy. we have to go over here to, you have to click on the actual Java file and hit deploy first. There may be a way around that, but this is just what I'm used to doing. So it's going to redeploy here. Okay, so the text is actually there. Again, my editor is just being weird. I don't know if it's the combination of me doing a screen capture on my PC while using the editor that it is a little buggy, but the button is perfectly fine. As you can see here, you can see the press me text, and if I press and hold it down, you'll see the hover animation. Now, what it should do is if I enter a whole bunch of text here, which apparently I have to just manually type, let me just type in a whole bunch of stuff. It should be that when it gets to the end of the line, it automatically adds a second row of text. Start adding different characters. Let's use M, they take up the most space. Okay, so you see, because we didn't set lines equal to 1, it just takes up as much space as it wants. And you can actually do line returns in there. So it's like a full editor window, but that's where that max line and min line comes in if you want to set constraints on what people are allowed to do in this text box right here. So that is pretty much the completion of this first video. I know I had to run over to the second one because I had issues with that viewer, but it appears to be working okay now. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this starting another activity now. So basically what we're going to be doing is making it so that when you press this button right here, it actually does something. Come back over here. So the first way we do that is we add an on-click event, which is a part of the button object, and it calls a specific send a message method whenever, or whatever number is typed there, to call that method in Java code whenever the button's pressed. And it will have a parameter, and it will be the view parameter. I believe that view, yeah, this will be the view that is clicked. So when you click the button, it's going to basically pass you a reference to the physical thing you just clicked, so you can get access to its parameters and the attributes it may have. You can actually change it if you want to. It's void, which means it doesn't return anything, and it's, well, public. So let's go ahead and add these two things here. And this actually just needs to be added to main activity class. I'm assuming you can actually move those to different classes later if you want to, but that's something we'll have to figure out later. At the moment, I'm just going to add it to the main activity. So let's just copy their code here, come over here, and put it inside main activity. Probably best to put it below all this initialization code, so let's go all the way to the bottom and put it. Okay, so you have a little comment describing what it does. And then you have the function itself, and then I'm just going to delete this comment, do something, because it's pretty clear that we do want to do something. And then we need to add the on-click method. So let's just grab this. We're going to just keep their name as send a message because, well, it works. So let's come back over here and grab this and add it to the button. We'll just come down to a new line and put it. So on click send a message, and it's going to come over here and call this method. So this is how you link code and interface. So at this point, when you click it, it will call this method, but at the moment the method doesn't do anything, so we need to tell it to do something. I believe the intention of this little tutorial here is to actually take the text you type into that field and pass it to a new activity. And as far as activities, that is kind of, think of an activity as a view on the screen. I think we'll go and delve into more about what activities are later, but I'm pretty sure the best way to think about an activity is just something visible on the screen. If you have something you're looking at, like a physical window with a title bar and elements on it, that's an activity. And then when you click a button and you swipe to a new view, I believe that's a different activity. We'll talk more about that later, but and then this here, intents, are how you switch between two activities. I think you can actually do different things like little dialogues as well, but intent is also used for activities. And so, you know, intent, the name intent is the class that we use in Java, but it's an intent to do something if you think about it. So it tells us to put this inside the send a message method, and it wants us to create an activity called display message activity. So let's just take this line of code, and we'll copy it, and we'll put it right here. Paste. Now you'll see we get an error because it's saying it doesn't know what intent is. Now if you click import intent, if you just hover over the error and it gives you those suggestions right there, and you come back up here and look at these imports, you'll actually see it added import android.content.intent right there. So whenever you have something that's a red line, a missing class like that, you simply hover over it, click import, and it'll add the class for you. They actually tell you here to copy and paste that code, but I've simply had the IDE include it for me. And it tells you here how to do that. The constructor, this intent constructor, takes two parameters. The first one is the activity class that you're currently using, and then the second is the class of the app component, which, let me just read this, the class of the app component to which the system should deliver the intent. In this case, the activity that should be started. Okay, so basically the first one is the current activity, and the second one is the activity we want to start. It's telling you it will raise an error because it doesn't exist yet, which is why we're seeing that red line there, but we're about to make it. Now it says an intent not only allows you to start another activity, but can also be used to carry bundles of data to the activity as well. So inside the send message method, we need to use find view by ID to get the edit text element and add its text value to the intent. So basically what this is saying is, in addition to passing just the activity you're coming from, you can also pass bits of data to that new activity, and we want to pass the text we're getting from the text box. So we have to get that text box from our current view, and the way we use that is by using the find view by ID, which is just a method you can be able to call from any view. It's just they've written it for you. You will need an import statement for edit text because it needs to know what type edit text is, and it's also saying you'll define the extra message constant in a moment. So we will get an error saying we're missing extra message, but we're about to add that. This talks about more about how to add those parameters, so let's get into that. But let's first add this. So we have this first line of code, and we now need 3 more lines of code it's telling us to put. So let's put this in there. The first one is, like I said, we're going to have to import edit text because it needs to know what it is. But we're basically getting the view from the ID with the ID of edit message. Now you may be saying, what is this r.id? Basically, it's actually under, is it under gen? Yeah, yes, it's under gen, I believe. Okay, so this r.java right here actually contains a bunch of code in it that's generated by the compiler itself. So you never want to edit anything inside this gen file because it's going to be dynamic, and if you edit something, it will be overwritten again. So you would basically be wasting your time just writing anything inside that directory. But the idea is, when you compile, it goes through and generates a list of all the valid IDs and puts them inside that file. So you can just say r.id.edit_message, and that right there has to be the same as, let's go here, this ID edit message has to be the same as that. Okay. Next thing we're doing is we're storing a string, we're calling it message, and we're basically calling the method getText on the edit text object, and then we're converting it to string. So that just tells us what the user's entered in that text box. The final thing we're doing is taking our intent variable and putting extra, which is how you pass additional data, to the second activity, and we're passing that string message, and this extra message I believe is an ID. Let's come down here and read a little bit more about it. We'll define the extra message constant in a moment. Okay, so it carries data as key value pairs. So the second parameter inside that put extra is the value, which is the string. The first one is the key. So in order for the next activity to query the extra data, you should define the key in the public as a public constant. So what that basically means is when we get to the second activity, it needs to know how to get that data it's gotten, and so it needs to know what key to go look for. And so the way we're going to do that is by making a public static final string that's the key, and we're going to name it in all caps because that's standard for anything that's a constant. Pretty much if you make it public final static, it's a constant. And then we put a value for it. And we put this at the very top of our activity, and when it's constant like this, any other class can access that variable without instantiating this class. And that's kind of a programming thing, so hopefully most people know what that means that are watching this. But basically, by putting this at the top, any class can access it. So and it's telling you it's a good practice to use a prefix, so it ensures they're all unique and won't cause issues with other apps, because you can actually pass intents to other apps, not just your own app, but you can actually pass intents to apps someone else has written. So by using this unique identifier here, it allows you to avoid like conflicts and so forth. So we'll come all the way up here to the top and put this, and we're going to name it just my first name, because that's the ID we've been the same thing we set up our application with. If you come here and look at source, I put Wesley there. And then we're going to leave the default all caps message there. That should have fixed all of the errors in our IDE except for one. If we come back down here to here, because it now knows what extra message is. It's still yelling at us because it's saying, I don't know what display message activity is. And of course there's no import here because there is no class display message activity. It's one we have to write. So that's this second part down here. Start the second activity. Oh, I think I clicked something. Okay, so start the second activity. To start an activity, call the start activity and pass it your intent. The system receives the call and starts an instance of the activity specified by the intent. So after we add this line of code right here, we are completely done with our send, or the method that is called whenever the button is pressed. And again, start activity is just a method they've written for us, and intent is an object we've created. So that pretty much wraps up that. Now we have to create this display message activity, because otherwise, well, it's not going to know what to do. Okay, I really need to stop clicking on this. Okay. So to create a new activity using Eclipse, we want to go New, in the window that appears, open the Android folder and select Android Activity. So File, New. Let's see if it's the default one. If it isn't, no, it isn't. So we'll do Other, Android, and Android Activity. Next. Now it's going to ask us some more questions. We have to pick, again, we're just going to pick blank activity just like we did when we created the primary activity, and then we have to fill in the activity details, which this time we're going to care a little bit more about because we've already defined some names in our code. So blank activity, the activity name itself we're going to want to call display message activity. I cannot type. Okay, display message activity. Okay, let's see if there's anything else we need to change about it. Activity underscore display message, fragment underscore display message. So those are all filled in for us. Title, my message. So this is the title that actually appears at the top of the window. So we're just going to say my message. Okay. Gang, so we're just trying to follow them. The hierarchy point is actually something we need to select, so it needs to be part of main activity, and the navigation type is going to be none. So let's select well, actually, we have to provide a default information for the up button. No, that is important. So let's grab this. So basically what that means is when you press the back button, it knows which previous window to go to. So what we need to do here is get a hold of main activity, com dot, and then our package name, and then main activity, and that should be the same. Correct. So that's something you definitely want to do. Open the display message activity, and that's pretty much it. So now you can just click finish, and it will create additional layout files and additional code files. This is now, all the errors have gone away, I believe, except they're still giving us an error symbol, but nope, there it goes away. Yeah, okay. The IDE is a little slow sometimes. Okay, so all of our errors are now gone. The class includes implementation of onCreate, and we're going to update it. It also includes onCreate options menu, but you won't need that, so we can remove it. There's also an implementation of onOptionItemSelected, which handles the behavior for the action bar's up button. Keep that one the way it is. So that's going to use the default Android code to go back to the previous window. There's also a placeholder fragment that extends fragment. You will not need this class in the final version of the activity. Fragments decompose application functionality and UI into reusable modules. So basically the idea behind a fragment is if you have a piece of interface, in case you need to use it again, you create it in a fragment, and then that way you don't have to recreate the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. You just include the fragment, and it's going to show up the same everywhere. Again, it's part of the whole reusability thing. It's a wonderful feature of Android, so we're definitely going to take advantage of fragments. You can read all about them there. So it wants us to basically make our class look like this by deleting the things they told us to delete. So they've obviously left on create, they've left on option items selected, and so let's put this right here, and let's do this, and let's come in here and compare the two. Okay, the wonders of Windows management. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to make sure we're in the right class. You don't want to be modifying the wrong one here. So they've left on create alone. They have left on create options alone. It actually looks like they've modified it. Oh no, they've deleted the menu one. Sorry, so we can just delete that menu one. And then they've left on options item selected, and they've left placeholder fragment. So let's make sure we did everything. So update that later, remove that, keep that, and keep that. You will not need it, but it doesn't say to remove it, so we'll just leave that alone. Okay. Now let's go back to full screen here, because it just doesn't work very well the other way, in my opinion. Okay, the next thing it wants us to do is add the title string. So we want to make the title my message, so we need to add a string resource. Because at the moment, actually I'm guessing since they told us to do that, it's probably hard-coded in there. Let's see, where's the title? Is there a title? Well, I guess there isn't one. Okay. Oh, maybe it's hard-coded in here? Interesting. So if you use Eclipse, you can skip this to the next section because the template provides a title string for the new activity. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that because it's already been done for us. And that was the title we typed in when we created the window My Message. The next thing we have to do is add it to the manifest. So all activities that belong to your application have to be declared within the manifest. It's just something you have to do. It's just part of Android. So we have to use the activity element. And it looks like it should create a default entry for us, but let's go look at the one it's made. Let's go look at the one it's made and make sure it's done it properly. Again, this is the same type thing where it has tabs across the bottom, but we're going to go straight to Android, the XML file, and make sure we can see it. So it actually has created it. We have the primary activity, and we also have this new activity it created for us called display message activity. It has a name, a label, which is what you see when it's launched, and that's this title activity display message, and it also has parent activity, which helps with the up button or the back button on Android. It has a value and a name. I'm not really sure what this metadata is, to be honest with you, so I'm going to skip that for now. One thing I do want to note is we saw previously that, and actually the application's still open, so let's come over here. We've seen this training one. It's not a very good title, so let's fix that. So you'll see right here this label. The label for this activity app name is actually the same thing as the label that's put on the display itself, but it's defined in strings. So if we go to strings, we can easily change that. So let's go to strings and let's change app name. So we'll see app name is this training one. Let's make this my first app. Okay, so now when we deploy, we'll see that. Ooh, not ape or whatever, app. Okay, so my first app. So now we'll see that whenever we deploy our new application. Okay, let's go ahead and save this file because we made all those modifications to it they wanted us to make. Then receive the intent. So every activity is invoked by an intent regardless of how the user navigated there. So you get the intent that started your activity by calling get intent. This will retrieve the data contained within it, which we need because we passed parameters along with that data. And in the display message activity classes, it was called in the onCreate method. So we need to go to the onCreate and pretty much put these two lines right there. And we'll explain them in a second. So let's come back up here. And we want to put it just right here. We're going to put it below all the code they've generated for us. Again, we're going to have to import intent. and then that pretty much fixes that. And so we're creating an intent object and getting the intent, and then we're creating a string message, and we're doing intent.getStringExtra, which is a method they built in that gets a string from an extra parameter. Now this is where it comes in because it actually expects a key. And so the way we know that key is by referencing the main activity class constant extra message, which we defined up here. And so when you pass the parameter in, you give it this key, and when you get it back out, you give it this key, and you get the appropriate value. Okay, let's come down here. Now we have to actually display it. So, and then that pretty much will complete this app and this tutorial. We'll play around for a little bit more, but this tutorial is pretty much done after that, and we have our first app that has an interface with a custom title, and that when we enter data and click a button, it actually sends it to a new activity. And we'll play around with the back button and show you how that works as well. And all we really need to do to show it is do this. And I'll explain all this in just a second. Okay, so what's interesting about this is it's actually telling you, or showing you, let me import text view here, is that you can actually create UI elements from code behind. So I said earlier in the previous tutorial that the code and the interface is split up, and that's true, but under certain circumstances it's just ridiculous to try and define an interface. Like let's say you needed 500 elements, all of which belonged to, or not belong to, but let's say you needed 500 elements and you want all of them to be part of like a big scrollable list. Now you wouldn't want to go over here to XML and copy and paste the code 500 times, because then if you decide you want to change something like a margin, you have to go edit it 500 times, so that's just inefficient. Now there are better ways to display 500 elements through an XML anyway, but that's where the code comes in, so you could very easily put a for loop here and create 500 elements of text view. Now that's still bad practice because there's better ways to display large quantities of something, but you could put a for loop here, and that's where the power of code comes in. But like I said, you can create any element you can create over here in the XML file. Let's come over here, because we're actually looking at display message fragment. So we're actually looking at this layout right here, and it's completely blank. We actually want to get rid of this text view right here. We don't want that. Or I think, wait a minute, are they creating it? Let's make sure. Okay, yeah, they're creating it. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of this text view here. We just don't want it. And we create our own text view, and you have to pass it a parent, if you will. So we're passing it this because it's an activity. And then we're setting the text size, and we're setting the text, and those are just parameters you can set. And then final thing we do is we say set content view text view. So what this does is it actually sets the text view as the activity's layout. So it's going to take this entire layout, get rid of it, and put just this text view. It could be, there's other ways to handle that. I think you could say add and so forth and such, and so we'll look at that in a minute. In fact, let's go look at that now. I think if you do add view, is that considered a valid? Let's do this. Let's do get content view dot. No, it doesn't like that either. Let's go look at their API here. So we're pretty much done with this app at this point. So I'm going to leave this page and go back over here. And let's look at, what are we trying to figure out here? The set content view. That might be interesting to find. Let's look at layouts. Let's look at linear layouts. Okay. Well, tell you what, let's come back to that in a minute. Let's go ahead and deploy our code here. So if I go ahead and deploy this and come over here to our viewer, we'll see it close and reopen. And first thing you'll notice is the application title has changed. You're now seeing that My First App, and we're seeing a text field and a button. So this time let's just type my name, Wesley. Actually, let's not do that because that's kind of like narcissistic. Let's just say Android rocks. Might be slightly more interesting. Now when we press this button, it should open up a new activity with that view inside of it, and it has effectively crashed. So this is a good point to go figure out why it crashed, because I missed a step in the code. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. So you'll see you definitely do get crashes a lot. I mean, it's not, it doesn't just magically happen that you deploy code and it works the first time. That is not realistic. It might be, oh no, okay, that has to do with placing the fragments, so we don't want to touch that. Let's come back over here to this training and make sure I haven't missed a step. Starting another activity. Starting the second activity. Looks like this is all decent. Don't need to add that because that's already been added. Display the message. See, it should be working, but it isn't. So let's come over here and do something else. Let's do this now. Let's see if we're actually getting to this activity or if it's failing. So let's come and we're going to do something else here. We're going to do log dot is it I? Or is it, let's come down here and look at my logcat. So there's actually a way while you're developing that you can deploy information to, oh, that's interesting, it actually passed my tag. Oh, it must be if it contains. Okay, so you can actually do, it's an info and it has the log tag debug. Okay, so we want info.I. So this is a method available that'll print out. Let's put debug made it to new class. Okay. We have to import it, import android.utilities, and this will, as I'm running my application, I've written a filter here to filter, because if you don't have this filter here, it just spits out tons of data all the time. So I've added a filter here by just clicking the plus button and typing in the name debug, adding the log tag info, or not, I'm sorry, not log tag info, the log tag debug, which is the same thing I've entered there, and then setting the type to info. And so when you call log.I, it will log an info event with this tag and this content, this text. And so we'll be able to see it down here as our application is running it, if it's made it to this view properly. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this again, and we'll see what happens. Now, of course, it's going to load the first view fine, but let's just do test and hit this button, and we'll see if it fails or if it succeeds. And it looks as though it has crashed again, which is to be expected. But we are not actually seeing anything down here inside of our debug. Oh, no, we did. We saw it right here. Okay, debug made it to class. So what that's telling us is we are making it here. So it's successfully starting the new activity and should be successfully passing in information. If we wanted to, we could put a message here and make sure we're seeing that. But I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing that. I don't think that's the issue. So what that tells us then is one of these lines of code right here is causing the issue. So it's either creating the text view or setting it or setting the text. So actually let's put message here and run this and see if we're getting what we expect, and that is the text we type in. Okay, so we'll see it running in the background here, and let's just do test, press me, and it's going to crash again, so I'm not going to stay there. And we do see it, debug test. So it is successfully being passed. So then one of these lines of code is causing the issue. So that kind of helps us narrow it down. Because what that basically tells us is up until here we've done nothing wrong. But then it says, to show the message, create a text view widget, and set the text using this. Set it as the root view of the activities layout, passing it to set content view. So these lines of code right here are what it's telling us to do, and it's telling us we should be getting this right here, but it's not. So let's just, grab this and take it and put it right here, just make sure we didn't make any mistakes or anything with copying and pasting, which is possible. The other thing that's possible is trying to think if we need to get rid of this. I don't think so. Maybe. Let's cut this out of here. That might be part of it. No, because it wants something there, so that's probably fine then. But at the same time, I don't think it will allow. I mean, I know it won't allow. Here's the trick. You can only have one element inside the root. So I think part of our issue here is because we're trying to add another element, but we're not adding it, we're simply setting it. So let's do this. Let's go back to there. I'm pretty confident we've done everything right now. I don't think it's any issue with that. I think it's simply an issue with something else. So let's search. Let's use this first. So let's do set content view. And we'll see this right here. When we click on this, it takes us to the activity, and if we see, let's find down here until we find the class of set content view. Okay. Okay, here we go. Here's all the methods. So we need, the first thing I want to check for is see if there's an add context view. There most certainly is. Okay, so I'm going to try add content view just because I think that might alleviate some of our issues. Add content view. So this I think is going to, it doesn't like that anymore for some reason. Oh, because it requires additional parameters. Okay, so we need a view and some parameters for that. So let's go figure out what those parameters are. And by clicking this, view group.layout params, we're going to do, pretty much we just want to do wrap content. So we're going to do layout dot wrap content. Let's make sure that's the right class. It is part of layout params proper. Okay, it still is giving an error there. Let's save it and see if it goes away. No, not quite. Let's see what else it wants. The method add content is not. Okay, let's see why. So it's returning ints here, but it wants an actual object of view layout param. So let's do this. Let's say layout params, and it's going to want to import it. So if we cover over here, okay, now it wants either, it's giving us 3 different options for constructors. We have 2 integers, or we have a context attribute set in a layout params. However, I am assuming that the 2 integers, let's come down here and look at the constructor. It wants, if we go with the option for public constructors, the 2 integers, it wants 1 for width and 1 for height. Perfect. So this is where we use the ints. So we're going to say layout params.wrap content for width and height. Okay, and that actually will fix that. Now we just need to say, let's actually give it a better name here. Let's say layout. So if we put layout, that fixes that. Perfect. So this is going to add it to this linear layout or relative layout. Let's actually make it a linear layout just because we can, and our previous one was a linear layout. And I tend to like linear layouts a lot. So I'm just going to change that to that, and we've, instead of doing set content view, we've used add content view. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this debug statement since we know we're making it this far successfully. And let's redeploy our app here and see if we get any more success. Okay, so now we have our app again, and let's try this. Let's say hopefully this works. And when I press me, it works. Okay. So then the answer there is yes, there's something wrong with that set content view. interfering with that relative layout. So that's kind of an interesting issue with their own training guide there. It's kind of odd. I'm feeling like we probably missed something and that they may have told us to delete that. Let's see here. So it tells us to create the second activities. It tells us to use, we did do a blank activity. There's also a fragment class. You will not need that. I'll bet you it tells us somewhere in here to delete it, and I just missed the memo. It looks like this. Let's keep going. The title string, add to the manifest, receive the intent, display the message. There's like a search for like remove or delete or something. It's not telling us to do that. Okay, so I'm just kind of skimming it. If you guys want to go back and reread all that in detail, there may be an issue where we have to, it actually tells us as one of those notes to clear it first, but I think add content view makes more sense anyway, because that way you know for sure what the parent element's going to be, and it's going to be taking up full width and height. You don't have to worry about being a text view in some unknown element, because in reality you're never going to want to make a text view the parent element anyway. That's just not practical. You want it to be something like this, and then you're going to want to be populating elements inside of it, or populating those elements values. And then we learned an interesting thing about the layout params and how you can add contents. So that worked pretty good. I don't really like this font size being 40. I'm just going to comment this out and see if it uses a default one. And the other thing that's interesting here is it has a padding set, the same as on display message fragment. Let's come over here. They both have, oh no, display message fragment actually does not have. Oh, that's interesting. What is this here? Fragment display message, activity display message. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. That was probably part of the problem here. Okay, so I was just jumping straight to the fragment, forgetting that there's an activity in between. So it might have been that fragment needed to just be deleted altogether. But, you know, all things aside, I actually like this fragment being the way it is. So I'm not going to mess with that. Now that brings up an interesting point though. Let's actually look at activity main. It is using a frame layout as well. So the activities are not something we want to delve into yet, because we're just using fragments within the activities. But this fragment main has padding on it, and so does this fragment display message, but I didn't see any padding on our window. So let's deploy this again now that I've gotten rid of the font size and see if it does any better. Oh, I'm sorry, we have to go back to a Java file. Let's hit deploy here and see what it looks like. Definitely will be a smaller font size, but the question is, will it be any better? Text, getting less creative with my data here as we go along. Hit press me, and now it's of course much smaller text, almost really probably too small to see, so you might need to up that. But again, the padding is not there, so let's fix that because it kind of looks tacky. Let's make the font size, first of all, let's see what the actual parameter is. It wants it in float size. It doesn't really tell us what that unit is. Let's do just something like 14 or something. We'll see. Assuming it's pixels, 14 pixels would be a decent one. And let's set some padding. Dot set padding. We can actually simply set left, top, right, bottom, and all that stuff. So let's come back over here and look at this fragment main, because I think that's a good example. So we'll see they're using @dimen activity underscore vertical underscore margin. So what I would like to figure out is how to get this same value inside code. So let's see if we can play with this. I think we can do r.dimen. What was it called? Activity vertical margin. Okay. .dimen. Activity vertical margin. Perfect. Okay, so left, top, right, bottom. So this is actually going to be horizontal because we're applying it to the left. We want to apply the same thing to the right, but this one's going to be, oh my, what have I done? Okay, hard.dimen. Activity vertical margin. Okay, so this should add margins to that element. Same margins as the other page. Okay, and that should take care of that. So let's see if this helps at all, makes it a little more aesthetically pleasing, because I do believe aesthetically pleasing apps are very important. So let's try this. Test, press me, and we are seeing our new window, but we are not seeing the text element. So that is something we need to figure out why. Now that we have the app successfully not crashing though, let's play with this back button for a minute. So you'll actually see if I tap the button in the top, waiting for it to highlight, and let go, it will take me back to my previous application. Now if I hit this, it'll take me to the next window. Same thing if I hit the physical back button here. If I hit the back button, it'll take me back to my previous window. So that's how, by adding that parameter when we created the activity, telling it what the previous application was, it knows how to implement the back button like that. So that's, you know, pretty helpful. We do need to figure out why our text is not showing up, because that is not a good thing at all. So let's do this here. Let's just comment this out and see if it goes away. And if it goes away, then we know the issue is with that line and not with the text size line. So let's come here, and it's relaunched. So let's do hi, and now we're seeing our text again. So the issue is not with the text line, it's purely with this set padding line. So we have to figure out why that issue is, and this is still a little small for me, so let's make it like 24 maybe, and let's figure out what we've done wrong here that this is causing it to crash. We've set margins on it, but I'm not sure what margins those are in. Okay, see, it might be so incredibly large. He's actually telling you what it is. It's such a large number, it's being shot off the screen. So that's an interesting thing we'll have to play with, because if you go over here to this values dimensions file, it's actually in DP, which is, I mean, it should be working, but it's not. So maybe we have to tell it that the units are DP. Let's try this. Dot set units. We'll play with that later. We'll play with the whole DP concept, but for now let's just get rid of this and just say 30 for all of them. We'll just manually type in a number. And again, we're doing this in code, so if I were going to do this, I'd probably want a little better way to do this. So let's come up here and let's say padding equals 30. We'll just say int padding equals 30. This way it adds the same padding to all of them. If we want to change it, we only have to change it once. Just good programming practice. So let's come over here and redeploy our application, and we should see both padding and a larger font size this time, because I've done that. Okay, new, and perfect. We see a larger font size and padding. That is exactly what we wanted. So now if we hit the back button, we'll see it goes back to the previous window. And if we type in working, oops, let's just add funny stuff there because we can. It'll add that to the next window. So that pretty much wraps up how to pass from activity to activity. We also went about how you add layout elements through code a little bit, and we talked about intents. We talked also a little bit about debugging messages to the logcat window, which is extremely useful. Those of you who don't see this logcat, you just have to go to Window, Show View, and then Other, and then you'll be able to click logcat and it'll show up. Whenever I'm not using it, I pretty much just drag that down so I don't have to see it. So that's everything we covered in this second activity, and we talked about how to pass parameters from the first activity. So that's going to wrap up the second tutorial, and we've officially finished their building your first app tutorial, which means the next time we start this, we're going to be on adding the action bar, and we're going to start actually getting into how to add more effective navigational elements than just clicking a button once and having it open a new activity. That's fine, but it's really going to be useful to have navigation to be able to set up an action bar. So we're going to start doing that in the next tutorial. And again, please like, and subscribe, and tell all your friends about these videos. And if you're enjoying them, please drop a line in the comment. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I will do my best to monitor them and answer every question to its fullest. If anyone asks a question or points anything out that's very noteworthy, I will definitely make a comment in the following video I do about that comment, or about that previous video and the comment made. Other than that, have a great day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.